Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to show you how you can use retrofit then store the data in the room database using the Hilt and ViewModel. In this video I'll make the API call, then I'll get the data, store it in the room database. As soon as it is stored, then with the help of ViewModel live data I will update it on the RecyclerView. So let's begin by adding the dependencies. So I have already some dependencies which we need to copy and paste it in our build.gradle file. So first I'm copying this and opening this module build.gradle, and inside this dependencies block we'll simply paste these dependencies. So first two dependencies are for the view model, next two dependencies are for the retrofit, another one is the retrofit converter, and these two dependencies are for the room database. One is room compiler and one is room runtime, and this is the glide library, and these two are for the Hilt. And last JSON dependency I'll show you will be using in the room to store one object inside the table. So next we'll copy this class path and put it inside the dependencies of project level dependencies here, and we need some plugins. So these three plugins will add it inside this module level build.gradle file. So one is for the Hilt, one is for the capped, that is the Kotlin capped, as we are using capped for compilers, room compiler and Hilt compiler, and Android extension is just simply to get again import our views. So first of all, I need to create a package where I'm going to keep the dependency injection file, that is the Hilt, that is for Hilt. And the first file we need the app module, and this app module we need to annotate with the module, and we need to annotate as install in, and then we'll need to make it as the singleton component. Inside this I need to keep a URL that is for retrofit where we are going to make the API call. So that is the api.github.com/search. So we'll be making this API call and get the data from the server. Let me show you. It has some more parameter, that is repositories, and then the query parameter queue and the string, and this is the data we are going to get it. So I'm creating one function that will return the retrofit instance. We'll simply build retrofit.builder and pass our base URL and the converter factory, and that we already added the dependencies, so we'll be using the JSON converter factory, and then we'll call build. And as usual we'll make this function as singleton and provides, and when we have retrofit, that time we need a retro interface as well. So let me create a separate package with the name network. Inside this we'll keeping our network related files. So I'm creating another interface that is going to call retro service interface. You can give any name. Inside this function, inside this interface, we'll define a function and its HTTP method type. So that is the get, and here we'll be passing the query parameter. As I mentioned, after the URL, inside the URL you see q equal to and some string, so it's going to be passed from here, and that URL also have repositories in it, and inside the URL itself. So I will be passing it from here, and then it will return an instance of call and some data model type, data class type. So let's create another package model, and we'll be keeping our data classes inside it. So first class I am creating repository list. So this is the array. Since this is the array, so we need to make it item and some type of list, and inside this list it should be certain type. So I'm creating another class, giving it as the name repository data, and this class should have some properties, and those properties will come from the response. That's like name and description will use. So first let me put name here, name as the string type. Second parameter description will use the same name, and third parameter is the owner, that is inside another object. So we'll be creating another data class that is called owner, and owner itself have inside outer URL, so we'll be calling the same name and we'll pass it here. Now we'll use this repositories list inside our retro service interface. Now inside the app module, we'll simply create another function which is going to return the instance of retro service interface. And we'll mark this function as well, provides and singleton. Now I am creating another package that is for the database related files. So we'll be using room here. So I'm creating a separate class for our application database, and that I'm keeping inside the DB package. And now it need to be annotated. I'm using room, so it need to be annotated with the database, and then I will pass entity, will add entity later. And since this is the first time, so giving the version number as 1. And this class need to be defined as abstract and extend with the room database. Here inside the companion object will be keep creating a separate object, or will be defining an variable of app database type, and creating a separate function which is going to return the instance of this class. Now I'm simply checking if it is null, then initialize it. If it is not null, then will not initialize it. And we'll pass the DB name, any name you want to pass for your DB. So when we create a database, that time we need to create a interface that is called DAO. So I'm creating a app DAO now, and we need to annotate it as the DAO. And simply this DAO can be defined inside our app database class. So that is also going to be the abstract function. Inside app DAO, we can define our query. We can define query with the function, and we'll write our query as we want to get the data. So repository data, we can reuse it as the entity type as well. So we already have the data class repository data. We'll be reusing it, and we'll be defining it as the repository table, and the column, there are certain columns we'll be defining inside it, like the ID as the primary key, and auto generated should be true for it. And we'll give the column info name, that is ID, and that is the integer type. And similarly, name is also going to be defined as the column info. We'll give the same name, and we'll do the same for other variables. We'll use description and the honor. And we'll pass this entity inside our app database class. As I said, entity we need to define here as well. Now we just now define the class. We just now define the table name repository, so we'll use the same name here, and we'll define a function, and this function need to return the live data and the list of repository data type. And since we are returning data, so we need a function to insert it into the database. So this function will insert record. So as soon as we'll make the API call, we'll get the record, we'll insert it inside the database using this insert record function. And this on conflict, so this is in case there is some conflict happen, then it will simply replace that record. And this query is to delete the data from the table, from the repositories table. So that is because if I'm making an API call, we got the data, we store it inside the database, and second time also if I'm making the API call, so I don't want to store the duplicate data. That's why I'm defining this delete all records function. Inside this honor class, I'm defining a type converter. That type converter is needed to store the object inside our one column. So inside our repository data, we define a column honor, but honor is the object type. So we cannot directly store that object inside RoomDB. So for that, we need a type converter. So I'm creating that type converter just to store honor object inside our database. And for that, we'll be using Json library, as I mentioned in the starting of my video. when we are adding the dependencies, that I'll show you how you can use it. So here I'm using Json Library to converting object to string with the help of TypeConverter, and vice versa. So we'll be using a string to convert into the object, and then object will be using to convert into the string and store and retrieve data from the table. And we'll keep everything inside a class, that is TypeConverter owner, because this class need to be defined inside our app database. So let me copy this, go to app database, and we'll define a TypeConverter here, and we'll keep that class here. So if we'll miss this step, then your application will not work properly. And now we'll as Hilt, so we'll be creating a two function which is going to return the instance of database and the DAO. So first function that will returning the app database, and we need to define all the functions which is inside the app module as provides and singleton. Similarly, another function I'm creating that will return just the instance of our DAO. Now it's time to create our retro repository. Retro repository will actually make the API call, and then it will store the data. It will parse, store the data inside the room database. So that repository need to inject constructor, and it can have the access of retro service interface and the DAO, both the interface here. So first function, get all records. So get all records will coming from the database. So app DAO we have the access, and it will return this live data. So we'll make the same return type. Another function, insert record, and that need to have the repository data. We have the access of app DAO and repository data we need. So app DAO dot insert record, and we'll pass this repository data. And one more function that is actually making the API call to our GitHub API. Since we have the access to our retro service interface, so we'll directly call retro service interface dot get data from API, and we'll pass this query parameter, and then call dot enqueue. This is a step to use the retrofit. Then we'll define its return type of our API. We'll override two functions, that is on response and on failure. So one function we have override. It will override another function, that is on failure. So I'll not be going to do anything currently. So inside our on response, we need to get the response. So here we'll be calling delete all records, app.delete all records. So as soon as I'm getting a data, I'm deleting all the records inside the table, and then I'm inserting all the records, whatever response we are getting from the API. So I'm calling a for each loop and then calling this insert record function and then passing repository data object. So I'm just inserting, after getting the response, I'm simply inserting records inside the database. Since get all records have live data, it will automatically return the results as soon as data will change inside our RoomDB. Now we need to implement a application class because we are using Hilt. So when we use Hilt, we need to define a class with the annotation Hilt Android app, and we need to extend it with the application. And when we define application, we need to register it inside the manifest. And when we are making the API call, so we need to add the internet permission also. That is also done. Next step is ViewModel. So let's create another package for ViewModel. We'll be keeping our ViewModel inside this. And as you know, when we use Hilt, we need to annotate our ViewModel also, Hilt ViewModel, and we need to inject its constructor so that we can get the instance of our repository, and we'll extend it with the ViewModel class. Now here we need to call simply two functions. One is to get all repository list, that will be the live data of list, and the repository data type. It should be live data, not list data. Yeah. Now we'll import, and it will return the repository dot get all records. And another function of repository will call repository dot make API call, and will pass any query parameter. I am passing ny, so it will use this ny inside the search query. So our view model is also ready now. Let me make it visible in one screen. Yeah. Now let's go to our main activity and complete our UI work. So I'm simply adding a recycler view on my layout file. Here I'm creating a, as usual, separate function just to initialize our view model. So this is just initialization of a recycler view. I'm just adding a separator, and now I need to add a adapter, as you know. So since I don't have any adapter right now, so we'll come back to this step later. So now I'm creating another function to initialize our view model. So we already have our view model, that is main activity view model. And we'll simply call it get all repository list, and we'll set the observer on it. Since we gave the same name, so let me use different name, and we'll call it from the onCreate. And now we'll call viewModel.makeAPI call. Now it's time to create an adapter. Or before that, let me annotate this class as the Android entry point. I'm creating another package for our adapter, and inside this adapter package I'm creating a adapter for our recycler view. So this is the same step as we have done it in so many videos. We'll define this my view holder class, then we'll extend it with the recyclerView.viewHolder, and inside its constructor we'll pass this view. And at this point we don't have any layout for our recycler view, so let's create a layout file. And this layout file is simple layout file where I'm going to keep one image view on left hand side and two text view on the right hand side of that image. Just to display the thumbnail on this image view, we'll use glide. I'll show you. Our layout is ready. Now we'll use the same layout file, same XML layout file here. we need the data here, the list of repository data type. So we'll define it globally. I'll be creating a separate function to set that data from the outside. And now we'll pass this data inside this bind function and we'll set it to our text views. Data.name and text view description.text equal to data.description. And here we can use glide just to get the thumbnail of our image. And you can get the URL from data.owner.avatar URL. Use the correct name inside. Also we'll use this name here as well. And then we'll call into and pass our view, image view. And inside this onBind view holder, we'll call holder.bind and then we'll pass the list dot get or position. So our adapter is ready. Now we'll use this adapter inside our main activity. So we'll define it as global variable. We'll make it a why it is showing error. Okay, we can make it a late init where better. We'll initialize it here when we are initializing our recycler view and set it to our adapter, and then once we get the data, then we'll simply call set list data and then call modify dataset change. That's it. Let's run our application and see how it looks like. So it's showing some error. Let me see what we are missing. It says get retro instance warning. The same name in the module. Okay, so let's see our app module. Okay, so we made a mistake. So both the function with the same name. Let's change the one function name. Retro service, that's better. Now let's run again and see. It's launching and it's crash. Let's see what we are missing still. Side view model. Okay. argument base URL must end with slash. Okay, so we'll go back to our app module and add this slash. So we are missing this slash. So retrofit need to have the slash at the end of URL. Let's run it again and see how it look like. There you go. So you can see now, so we first of all make the API call, we got the result, we inserted inside the room database, and then we automatically retrieve with the help of live data and displayed on the recycler view. There you can see inside our repository. So you are just making API call, inserting into the database, and then this get all records, returning the live data set retrieving. So guys, that's all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any question, you can ask me in the comment section. Thank you.